Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 82. This venerable ones can't believe it. Outside of the fragrance inn on Linling Island, the proprietress was dressed in red and green. Her delicate wrist was adorned with beaded bracelets, and her waist was as slender as a willow tree. She was leaning against the entrance, eating snake gall and fried melon seeds. Every time there was an auction at the Shizun pavilion, there would always be a large number of people who would come to stay at her place. That was because she was beautiful, intelligent, and knew how to get things done. That pair of beautiful eyes with distinct black and white could easily determine what the guests wanted. At this time, the sun was high in the sky and it was already past noon. The proprietress spat a mouthful of melon seeds. She estimated that the auction would end in another 2 hours. The price of staying at Linling Island was high, so most cultivators wouldn't stay for long. She wouldn't be able to earn much from the room fees today. However, it didn't matter. Cultivators always had to eat dinner before leaving, so she could still earn some money from the meal. The proprietress brushed away the crumbs of melon seeds on her skirt. She turned around and shouted to the shop assistant, "Erfu, wipe the tables and chairs in the lobby again. Also, take out a basket of the snake gall and melon seeds that I fried. Put a plate on each table. We have to prepare for tonight's business." "Yes, madam, I'll go get it now." The shop assistant hurried away. The proprietress smiled with satisfaction. She had enough sun and melon seeds. Just as she was about to return to the inn to supervise the work, she suddenly saw a black and white figure coming from the end of the road. When he got closer, she realized that he was a handsome black-robed cultivator. He was carrying a person in his arms as he rushed into her inn. "Stay in, we want to rent a room." It was probably because he came suddenly and his behavior was strange. The shop assistant was shocked. He opened his mouth and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. Moran said angrily, "We want to stay. Are you deaf? Where's the owner?" "Ayo, young master." A woman's voice sounded behind him. It was 30% joking and 70% apologetic, which made it difficult to get angry. Moran suddenly turned around and saw the proprietress' smooth and slick smiling face. "I'm sorry to have neglected you. He's new. If you need me, I'm the owner of this inn." Moran raised his dark brows and said anxiously, "We want to rent a room." The proprietress quickly and calmly looked at him. Seeing that this person was wearing a cloak, presumably he was a cultivator who has participated in the Shizun pavilion auction. However, because he was in a hurry, the hood of his robe had fallen down, revealing a delicate and handsome face of a young man. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that on his wrist, there was a brocade pouch embroidered with the black tortoise totem. It was the kinkin pouch that the Shizun pavilion gave to the customers after then won a bid. It means he had money. The proprietress' eyes flashed. And could be very rich. She then looked at the person in his arms. Because of the large veil covering the person's face and because the person's face was leaning inwards, she couldn't see the person's appearance clearly. However, the proprietress's eyes were very sharp. She quickly swept her gaze over the snow-white robe, and her gaze fell on the hand hanging from the wide sleeve. He was tall and thin, his skin was like porcelain, his fingers were long and sharp and his bones were clearly defined. A beauty. The proprietress immediately understood. Although he was a handsome man, it wasn't rare for two men to dual cultivate in the cultivation world, so there was nothing strange about it. "Erfu, prepare a room." The proprietress reacted quickly. Without asking anything else, she snapped her fingers and ordered, "I want the most comfortable room, the sun and moon superior room." Chu Wanning's illness came fiercely and without warning. Fortunately, this was Gai Yuyesek's territory and good medicine was everywhere. Moran invited a doctor to examine Chu Wanning. The doctor, who had a rather high cultivation level, closed his eyes and touched Chu Wanning's wrist with his calloused fingers. He didn't say anything for a long time. Moran couldn't help but ask, "Doctor, how's my Shizun?" His condition is not critical, but what he hated the most was this kind of person who spoke in a roundabout way. Moran widened his eyes. But what? But this old man feels that his condition is very strange. Your master's cultivation level is very high, high enough to be considered rare in this world. But when I examined him just now, his spirit core is very fragile. It can't even compare to a small cultivator who has just built his foundation. If cultivation was compared to water, then the spirit core was the container that carried that water. The spirit core was innate, while cultivation was slowly nurtured. Therefore, the stronger the innate spirit core, the easier it would be for a person to cultivate. However, when one's cultivation level reached a certain level, it would nourish the spirit core. Therefore, generally speaking, the two complemented each other. For a grand master like Chu Wanning, his spirit core must be very strong. Therefore, ordinary doctors wouldn't pay special attention to this when taking their pulse. Moran was shocked. How is this possible? This old man also felt that it was impossible. Therefore, I repeatedly examined him many times, but it was the same every time. My Shizun's spirit core can't even compare to a foundation building cultivator? How is this possible? It simply cannot be. Doctor, please take a closer look. Could it be that you made a mistake somewhere? This old man has always been cautious in his medical practice. Since I said it, I must be 100% sure. If you don't believe in me, you may ask somebody else to examine your master's spiritual core, but the result will be the same. Moran was stunned. The doctor added, "It's precisely because your master's spirit core is very fragile that it should have been perceived by a certain powerful weapon. The weapon's attribute should have some resonance with him, but it wasn't his own. Therefore, he suffered a backlash. His spirit core couldn't bear it, so he fell unconscious. This old man will prescribe him some medicine. After taking it, he should rest a lot. He'll be fine very soon." After sending off the doctor, Moran sat beside Chu Wanning's bed. He held his chin in his hand and stared blankly for a long time. Weak spirit core? How is this possible? However, that old man just now didn't know what happened at the Xianyuan pavilion, but he could accurately say that Chu Wanning had encountered a powerful weapon. It really didn't seem like he was lying. In addition, there was also Bulet and Gui. Just now at the Xianyuan pavilion, Moran only released a little bit of spirit energy. Chu Wanning suddenly felt strange and fainted. Therefore, he didn't have time to determine whether that sword was really the holy weapon from his previous life. If it was, why would Bulet and Gui resonate with Chu Wanning? And why would it cause a backlash to Chu Wanning? As he thought about this, he stared blankly at Chu Wanning. After an unknown amount of time, the person on the bed seemed to be haunted by a nightmare again. His beautiful brows furrowed and his eyelashes couldn't help but tremble. For some strange reason, even he didn't know why. Moran reached out and gently stroked his forehead. Shizun. Shizun. Chu Wanning. I've lived 2 lives. Could it be that you still have secrets that I don't know of? Meanwhile, the proprietress quickly boiled the medicine in the kitchen and brought it to Moran. After tasting it, Moran found that it was very bitter. It was a taste that Chu Wanning hated the most. Moran sighed and called out to the woman who was preparing to leave. "Madam, do you have candy?" "Sigh. The inn's candy is all freshly boiled. We've already used up all of today's candy. But if the esteemed cultivator wants some, I'll send someone to buy some on the street." Moran looked at the steaming medicine and shook his head. "Then forget it. The medicine will become cold after a while. It won't be effective anymore. Thank you very much for your assistance." "Ah, esteemed cultivator, there's no need to be so polite. Just call me if you need anything else." After the proprietress finished speaking, she tactfully left and closed the door behind her. After placing the medicine at the head of the bed, Moran sat back on the edge of the bed. He put one hand on his knee and used the other to help Chu Wanning up. Shizun, it's time to take your medicine. Feeding him medicine was something that he was very familiar with in his previous life. Moran picked him up and let Chu Wanning lean against his chest. He took a spoonful of the medicine and brought it to his lips to cool it down. Then, he slowly fed it to Chu Wanning. This was already the second time he was taking care of Chu Wanning after his rebirth. He didn't know why, but even though he hated this person, he still felt nervous when he saw him sick. Bitter. Although the person in his arms wasn't awake, he was still aware. He frowned in a half-asleep state and turned his face away, refusing to drink any more. Moran couldn't be more familiar with this action. He raised the spoon and turned him back. Patiently, he coaxed, "There's still one more mouthful. You'll get better after drinking it. Come on." As he spoke, he fed him another spoonful. Chu Wanning drank half of it and coughed. However, his frown deepened. So bitter. It's sweet, it's sweet. The next spoonful is sweet. Come, come, come. Ugh. The next spoonful is sweet. I promise. It's so sweet that you can't believe it. This is the world's sweetest syrup that I ordered people to find. As he coaxed him, he didn't even know who he was anymore. Moran smoothly pulled out the words from his previous life. It's very delicious. You'll regret it if you don't open your mouth. Just like that, he coaxed and coaxed. The entire bowl of medicine was consumed. When he finished the last spoonful, Moran heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to get up and tidy up, a white shadow suddenly flashed in front of him. Before he could react, his face was firmly slapped. Liar, get lost. After Chu Wanning said this harshly, he tilted his head and went back to sleep. Moran, who was slapped for no reason at all, was left with his mouth half open. After a while, he covered his face with his hands, feeling wronged. Just as he was about to explode, the person in his arms let out a muffled groan. He must have dreamt of something extremely uncomfortable. His expression became increasingly distorted. Seeing him like this, Moran had to let go of his indignant anger. He didn't have any sweets left. Seeing that the cancan bag was still at the head of the bed, he had an idea and took out a bottle of sweet taper-scented dew. He patted Chu Wanning's cheeks, neither too lightly nor too hard. This was his revenge. Lie down alone for a while. I'll go and mix some water for you to drink something sweet. Seeing that Chu Wanning was quiet, Moran supported him, intending to let him lie back on the pillow. Unexpectedly, when he got closer, he heard him mutter in a low and muffled voice. Then, he muttered, wronged. Moran was stunned. What? Chu Wanning's eyes were tightly shut. His fan-like eyelashes couldn't stop trembling, as if he was suppressing a great deal of pain. The color of blood faded away bit by bit. He had clearly fallen into another dreamscape, a dreamscape that was even more terrifying and ferocious. He shook his head slightly, and a rare trace of sorrow appeared on his usually cold and noble face. Wronged. For a moment, Moran suddenly felt his heart stop beating. A strange feeling welled up in his chest. It was as if a secret was right in front of him. He only needed to lift one last layer of gauze to uncover it and he would immediately understand it. He couldn't help but stare at Chu Wanning. He whispered, "It's you what? Who wronged you?" For a moment, Moran felt as if he was in a trance. He didn't know if it was because the candlelight was too dim and made him see wrongly, but Moran saw that Chu Wanning's thick eyelashes seemed to flash with water. It was I who wronged you. These words, when they came out of Chu Wanning's mouth, were as light as mist, but when they entered his ears, it was like a clap of thunder. Mo Ran suddenly bounced up from the bed. His entire body froze in an instant. His pupils contracted. He stared at the handsome face of the person on the bed in disbelief. His expression changed instantly. His heart was shocked as if thousands of horses and thousands of soldiers were galloping past. His hands clenched into fists. His blood seemed to boil into a raging fire overnight and then condensed into ice overnight. What did you say? You. After being stunned for a long time, Mo Ran suddenly grabbed Chu Wanning's throat. His eyes were ruthless. The childish innocence he pretended to have after his rebirth was completely gone. Chu Wanning, what did you just say? Say it again. Say it again. It was I who wronged you. Be it in life or death, I don't blame you. This was a curse that he would never forget in his life. It was a nightmare that had tormented him for 2 lifetimes. Many times when he closed his eyes, his ears would be filled with these words. The person who said it was no longer in this world. But these words were clearly spoken by Chu Wanning in his previous life. Why would he now? Why would he? Could it be that Chu Wanning was also reborn? End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 83. This venerable one wants you. This crazy thought caused Mo Ran's eyes to turn bloodshot. His entire body trembled as he lost all reason. He gripped Chu Wanning's throat tightly, growling as he continuously interrogated him. As long as he said the second half of the sentence, as long as he said the words "I won't complain even if I die." Then it must be, it must be. Ugh. A muffled groan sounded by his ear. Chu Wanning couldn't breathe, his face flushed red and his struggle finally weakened. Mo Ran stared blankly for a moment. His crimson eyes widened, both madness and clarity flickering within. Suddenly, he reacted and hurriedly let go. Chu Wanning fell heavily back onto the bed, the 5 terrifying marks on his neck gradually calling back to Mo Ran's senses. He opened his mouth. He wanted to call out Shizun, but he couldn't. He wanted to call out Chu Wanning, but he couldn't either. After hesitating for a while, he finally managed to croak out, "You." His throat was dry as if it had been burned by fire. Mo Ran swallowed his saliva with difficulty and slowly regained his sense. Yesterday's events flashed before his eyes. In this life, Chu Wanning had never acted strangely, so he definitely couldn't have been reborn. Then why would he at this moment say those last words from his previous life before he died, "It was I who wronged you"? Wasn't this a lie that Chu Wanning had no choice but to say to him in order to protect Shui Mang, in order to protect those hypocritical cultivators? He had never believed it, never wanted to believe that Chu Wanning would truly admit his wrongs to him, that he would speak softly to him. In any case, Chu Wanning was definitely lying to him. He definitely didn't like him. In any case, this Shizun had always looked down on him and had never treated him sincerely. He didn't regret killing his Shizun one bit. Not one bit. Mo Ran turned his face away and slowly closed his eyes. He didn't want to stay here for a moment longer. Whether Chu Wanning lived or died, what did it have to do with him? He turned to leave. He wanted to leave. But no matter what, he couldn't move his feet. "It was I who wronged you." In his memory, that cold and handsome face that was drenched in blood was actually somewhat gentle in the end. At Kunlun Taxu Palace, the person in the pool of blood slowly raised his hand and touched his forehead with the tip of his finger. His finger was already cold, but there was some warmth in his eyes. But at that time, Mo Ran felt that he must have seen wrongly. "Be it in life or death, I don't blame you," Chu Wanning said softly as tears of blood slowly flowed down from his eyes. "Mo Ran." The person on the bed murmured in his dream. The 2 soft sounds made the person who was called tremble. By the time he came back to his senses, Mo Ran was already standing by the bed, one hand propped against the bed, leaning over to stare at Chu Wanning's pale face. His thin, watery lips opened and closed slightly. Another sound entered his ears. Mo ran. Closing his eyes, Mo ran frowned. His fingertips were stuck in the hard, cold rosewood board, as if he was trying to suppress something. In the end, he couldn't help it and said hoarsely, "Chu Wanning, were you being sincere? Everything you said, did you meant it?" His chest hurt so much that it felt like it was about to burst. Since Chu Wanning was definitely not reborn, then the only reason he said such words now was because he felt that he didn't treat him well and felt guilty. Was he sincere? Chu Wanning was talking in his sleep, so naturally, he wouldn't answer him. But Mo Ran still wanted to wait for an answer. After waiting for a long time with his eyes closed, there was still no movement. Mo Ran sighed and slowly opened his eyes with some reluctance. But he was caught off guard and met a pair of hazy phoenix eyes. Half dreaming and seemed to be about to wake up. Chu Wanning opened his eyes at some point, but from his expression, it could be seen that he was not fully conscious. It was just a temporary awakening from the torment. That pair of night eyes were still empty and absent-minded, as if they were thousands of years old. Yuheng of the night sky was usually as sharp as thunder. It was rare for him to look at a loss like this. Without his usual sharpness, the person lying there was actually so beautiful. The corners of his eyes were dyed with a thin layer of red. He just looked at him so unguardedly. His heart trembled violently. Mo Ran felt his throat tighten. He said in a low voice, "You." This scene was too similar to the scene when he made love with him in his previous life. Mo Ran's thoughts trembled. For a moment, he felt like he was still in that Wushan hall and Chu Wanning was his prisoner. Just thinking about it made his mouth dry up and his breathing gradually become heavy. I don't like him. Don't touch him again. The enmity of the past is all in the past. In this life, we are only master and disciple. Mo Ran supported himself with one hand on the bed and looked down at Chu Wanning. He restrained himself and did not cross the line. His long hair that was tied into a ponytail hung down from his shoulders. The ends fell on the other side of the pillow. Chu Wanning lay there with his clothes on. His long hair was scattered. At first, his expression still in a daze. After a while, his eyes gradually reflected Mo Ran's visage. Chu Wanning was slightly startled. Then, as if the nightmare had not disappeared, he thought he was still in the dream. He slowly reached out his hand and stopped in midair for a moment. Finally, he touched Mo Ran's forehead. "It was I who wronged you." When he said this, it was like in his previous life. It was rare to see such gentleness. Mo Ran only felt an explosion of sort. Something in his mind suddenly collapsed. His heart was beating like thunder, his mind was feverish. The clarity that he managed to regain collapsed again, and before he can think about anything, the familiar desire made him bend over Chu Wanning's body and fiercely kiss his slightly opened lips. His trembling hands uncontrollably tore at his clothes. In an instant, the past was like the waves of the sea. Everything around him melted like frost and snow. It was as if he was in the Wushan palace again. The dragon, phoenix, and red candles were shining brightly. This person under him struggled and scolded, panting and humiliated, but he could not break free, could not escape his fierce grip. Between the hot and wet kisses, Chu Wanning let out a muffled groan that made Mo Ran even more crazy. What dislike? What hatred? What not touch him again? All of them were shattered into bubbles. Mo Ran only felt that Chu Wanning was not dead yet. The slightly trembling body under him was still his. He wanted to kiss him. He wanted to hug him. He wanted to fiercely tear him apart and penetrate him. He wanted to make this proud and cold person beg for mercy under him. He wanted to fuck him until he climaxed. Chu Wanning. He murmured hoarsely. The exhilarating feeling washed over his soul. Even his fingertips were burning hot. Mo Ran once again sucked on those slightly cold and soft lips. The bitterness of the medicine still lingered in his mouth, but it made his heart beat like a drum. He was in a daze. He was already too familiar with this person. After his rebirth, because of resentment, he was unwilling to be intimate with him. But when he kissed him, only Moran himself knew that this was a kind of ecstasy. It was like a traveler on the verge of death in the desert tasting sweet water. It was like an extremely cold night when he wrapped himself in a warm coat over a fire pit. He originally thought that after his rebirth, he would naturally cut this type of relationship with him. But unexpectedly, in the end, he was unable to control himself. He was teased by just a few words and he already lost his reason. He kissed him without permission. If it weren't for the fact that Chu Wanning's clothes couldn't be torn open and that something had suddenly fallen out of his lapel and pierced Moran, perhaps he would have completely lost his mind and directly take his master without thinking about the consequences. Clang! Clang! After piercing Moran's finger and falling on the pillow, the metal rolled twice and stopped moving. Moran's head was in shambles. He didn't care about this small injury. He only angrily glared at that thing and then continued to wrestle with Chu Wanning's troublesome clothes. It would have been fine if they hadn't kissed or hugged each other, but once they were on top of each other, all the feelings from his previous life came back. Just the thought of Chu Wanning's slender and tight waist made him feel an irresistible excitement. But the white gauze on Chu Wanning's body seemed to be cursed. He couldn't tear it open even after pulling at it for a long time. Moran cursed in his heart. He fiercely hit the bedboard and got up to take his sword to cut open the waist belt. When he sat up, he glanced at the metal object that had fallen to the side. Moran didn't care about it at first. But suddenly, a trace of clarity flashed through his chaotic mind. He was stunned and suddenly turned back to look at that thing again. It was a brilliant golden orchid butterfly hairpin. When he was in the Peach Blossom's spring, he saved up feathers for several days to buy it for Siasini. At that time, he personally put the hairpin on top of Siasini's ponytail and coaxed that unhappy Shidi, saying, "Children should use gold and red hairpins. Look, it's so lovely." Moran picked up the hairpin. He felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. He was completely stunned. No. What's going on? Why did the thing he gave to Siasini be with Chu Wanning? Could it be? A terrible idea gradually emerged in Moran's mind. He slowly turned back and looked at Chu Wanning with moist and lustful eyes. Shizun had fainted. Moran stared at his face. Looking at the red lips that were kissed by him, his heart suddenly skipped a few beats. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. He felt that he must be going crazy. Could it be that Chu Wanning didn't lie to him? Could it be that Siasini was really Chu Wanning's son? This thought made Moran shudder. He only felt that his head was about to explode. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 84. This venerable one stole a kiss and you didn't even know. When Chu Wanning woke up, he saw Moran sitting by the table in a daze with his hands on his cheeks. A bean lantern was reflected in his dark eyes, so bright that they seemed hollow. Chu Wanning wanted to sit up, but he didn't have the strength and could only give up. The snow-green curtain fluttered gently. He turned his body to the side and stared at Moran silently. However, that fool was still immersed in his thoughts and didn't notice that his Shizun had woken up. He couldn't be blamed though. Anyone would be less than thrilled to know that their lover had a son with another woman. Was Siasini really Chu Wanning's illegitimate child? How could this be? Chu Wanning was so picky, what sort of woman could possibly catch his eyes? Moreover, if the matter of an illegitimate child was true, Chu Wanning must have had him in his previous life. However, in all the years they had been together, Chu Wanning's words and actions never indicate anything that could be associated to a husband at all. But what was going on with this golden butterfly hairpin? Moran was so distressed that he knocked his forehead on the table. He was about to go crazy. He wasn't smart to begin with, and he wasn't good at thinking about such complicated things. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. In the end, he hugged his head and completely collapsed on the table. "Mo Weiyu, what are you doing?" A deep and pleasant voice rang out in the room. It sounded a little hoarse. Suddenly, Mo Ran jumped up and said in surprise, "Shizun, you're awake." Chu Wanning coughed a few times and raised his eyes to look at him. "This is an inn at Linling Island." "Yes, yes." Mo Ran stood up and walked to the bedside. He suddenly saw that Chu Wanning's lower lip seemed to have some broken skin. He thought about how he was in a daze and didn't control himself when he kissed him, almost causing a big mistake. His face flushed red. Seeing that he was in a daze, Chu Wanning asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing. It's nothing." Mo Ran waved his hand and changed the topic. "It's like this. Shizun suddenly fainted at the Xianyuan pavilion, so I brought you here to rest. I found a doctor to prescribe some medicine, and then, when I heard you talking in your sleep, I thought of the past and couldn't help but kiss you." But how could he say these words? Mo Ran's voice gradually became softer and softer. His eyes were filled with a rare fluster and he appeared to be more and more embarrassed. Chu Wanning's heart skipped a beat when he heard that Mo Ran had called for a doctor, especially since seeing that Mo Ran has a strange look in his face. He was afraid that Mo Ran already knew that he was poisoned and that his body would shrink into that of a child. He could not help but quietly tighten his grip on the quilt. "What did the doctor say?" Chu Wanning asked with trepidation. "The doctor said that Master was affected by the spirit of a godly weapon and couldn't handle it." Mo Ran hesitated for a while before continuing, "Shizun, your spiritual core. It's fine. It's just more fragile than normal." Mo Ran was stunned. He had been thinking about how both Chu Sun and Chu Wanning having scars on their chest and was guessing if there was some sort of connection between them. However, hearing Chu Wanning say this, it didn't seem to be the case. He could not help but ask, "How could this be? Shizun is so powerful, your spiritual core is definitely not inherently weak. When did it start?" "A long time ago. Ever since I was injured many years ago, it has always been like this." Chu Wanning casually waved his hand. This was not what he was concerned about. "Did the doctor say anything else?" Mo Ran shook his head and said, "Nothing more." The candlelight was dim. Chu Wanning looked at him deeply and asked again, "Then why did you hit the table with your head just now?" Mo Ran held back for a while but couldn't. A while later, he simply threw caution to the wind. He took out the golden butterfly hairpin from his sleeve and spread it in his palm. "I found this. It's on you." The hairpin shone with a golden light, but Chu Wanning's heart continued to sink. Sure enough, he found out. In the end, he could not hide it. They were silent for a long time after they both sighed softly. The two did not speak again. At last, Chu Wanning closed his eyes. Just as he was about to tell the truth, he heard Mo Ran whisper, "Shizun, Xiaoshidi, is he really your son?" Chu Wanning. Opening his eyes, the blood that had just frozen into ice seemed to flow again. For a moment, Chu Wanning only silently stared at Mo Weiyu, who had a complicated expression on his face. The look in his eyes gradually condensed into clear word, "Idiot." "Right." Chu Wanning raised his hand indifferently and took away the gold butterfly hair clasp without waiting for Mo Ran's response. "I told you that already, why are you asking again?" Mo Ran covered his face and said, "I just want to confirm it again." Although Chu Wanning has repeatedly admitted that Xiaosini was his flesh and blood, Mo Ran was still skeptical. He endured the strong discomfort and secretly made up his mind that when he saw Xiaosini, he would definitely question him properly. Until he confirmed a blood match between them, he wouldn't believe it. After a while, Chu Wanning's strength gradually recovered enough to get up from the bed. "My clothes." He touched his lapel and was startled for a moment. He frowned and asked, "Why is it so messy?" Mo Ran coughed. Afraid that he would remember some fragments of what happened a while ago, Mo Ran hurriedly changed the topic. "Shizun, are you hungry? I heard that this inn's dishes are good. The Wensi tofu is especially delicious. How about we go down and try it? It's my treat." Chu Wanning coldly glanced at him, "With the money that I gave you." Although he said this, he still waved his sleeves and pushed the door open to go downstairs. Linling Island's dishes were similar to Yang Hu's. They were light and the taste was quite sweet, which was to Chu Wanning's liking. By this time, the Xianyuan pavilion auction had already ended and most of the cultivators had already left the pavilion. Some went to the inn and asked for private dining rooms, so they did not have to deliberately wear cloak to hide their identities. After Mo Ran and Chu Wanning sat down, the waiter served 2 cups of Biluakan tea and left after giving them the menu. "Shizun, you can take a look first. Take your pick." "I like all the dishes in the Jiangnan area," Chu Wanning said, picking up the cup and taking a shallow sip of tea. However, when the tea touched his lips, he suddenly frowned. Mo Ran asked, "What's wrong? Did you burn yourself?" "It's fine. Maybe it's because the weather is too dry, the corners of my mouth are a little chapped," Chu Wanning said and touched his lips in confusion. "Strange, when did it break?" Mo Ran immediately lowered his head guiltily. It took a while for the food to be ready, so Chu Wanning and Mo Ran talked about the Xianyuan pavilion. The two left early, and they did not know who ends up taking the holy weapon. However, this was not a big problem. When the time came, they would go and ask around. As the conversation progresses, the table is gradually filled with an array of Yangzhou dishes, and Chu Wanning feels that further questions will yield no new information, so he stops talking about it. His gaze swept across the table full of bowls, plates, and cups. After a pause, he raised his eyes a few inches and his gaze fell on the face of the young man opposite him, who was smiling somewhat nervously. Chu Wanning asked, "Have you been to Jiangnan before?" Before Mo Ran was reborn, he had naturally gone to see the apricot blossoms and misty rain. However, he did not forget that he was supposedly only 17 years old and had just entered the Shizun Peak for 2 years. He immediately shook his head, "I've never been here before." Chu Wanning lowered his eyes. His expression was calm, and his voice was clear, "But you ordered a table full of good dishes." When he said this, Mo Ran suddenly realized that he ordered all the dishes according to Chu Wanning's preferences. He originally wanted to let him eat better and recover his strength, but he forgot that he should not know Huayang cuisine so well. "When I was young, I worked in the back kitchen of the music house. There are many dishes that I have not yet tasted, but I have heard of them." Chu Wanning did not dwell on it and said, "Let's eat." Jiangnan is surrounded with water and Linling Island is a place where there are crabs in a cattail basket, shrimp in a bamboo cage and fish in willow branches. Therefore, on the square table, there were all kinds of seafood dishes: crispy Liang Creek eel with sauce, sweet and sour squirrel mandarin fish, pipa prawns, chrysanthemum sea conch, and stewed silver carp head, which were served in a variety of ways. As for fresh vegetables and meat, cold dishes, and desserts, they were all exquisitely made and served in an elegant way. Stewed lion's head with crab powder, crystal minced pork, chicken sauce, shredded cheese, soup dumplings, Wensi tofu, and so on. Mo Ran held his chin and watched the waiter put the last plate of Osman Thus cake on the table. Then, he quietly looked at Chu Wanning. He thought, "I wonder which one will he eat first with among the many dishes in front of him." After thinking for a while, he secretly made a bet with himself. It must be the lion's head with crab meat. This was Chu Wanning's favorite Yangzhou dish. As expected, when the dishes were set, Chu Wanning's chopsticks went to that side first without any suspense. Mo Ran sighed in his heart. This person is always so predictable. How he eats and works, he's always the same. He never. Gulp. A round and cute lion's head fell into Mo Ran's bowl. Changed. Mo Ran looked up in astonishment, and a flattered expression gradually appeared on his face. Shizun. I haven't been feeling well these days. I'll have to trouble you to take care of me. Did he hear wrongly? Mo Ran was even more shocked. Chu Wanning actually said to him, I'll have to trouble you to take care of me. He had never said the sentence in his previous life. Chu Wanning saw the young man's face slowly turn red, his brows relaxed and his eyes slowly widened. A strand of hair on his forehead stood up and swayed. He couldn't help but feel a little helpless, but he still wanted to save face. Chu Zongshi took a sip of tea again. My lips hurt. In fact, during the days when he became Xiaosini and was accompanied by Mo Ran, Chu Wanning was already feeling a little self-conscious. When he reflected on it at night, he also felt that he was indeed too harsh, that he had been unkind to Mo Ran. Since then, he told himself that when he regained his original body, he must not behave like that again. He had to change a little. When Elder Suanji came to the Peach Blossoms Spring, Chu Wanning coughed for a long time and reluctantly asked him how to make his disciple less intimidated by himself. Elder Suanji was stunned for a moment, then said, First of all, you have to express appropriate care to your disciple. Express care. Chu Wanning thought that Mo Ran might have never eaten crab meat lion's head, so he lightly opened his mouth and said, The stewed lion's head with crab meat is made from finely chopped top-quality pork, combined with shrimp roe and crab meat, then turn into a round shape. The lion's head is then simmered in a clear broth with green vegetables floating in it, and served in a red clay casserole. It's very good. Mo Ran was stunned. Why did he have to memorize the recipe? However, Chu Wanning felt that he was patiently introducing the dishes and that it was a way to express care for his disciple. Thus, during the meal, Mo Ran tasted all the dishes one by one and even listened to a bunch of dishes that sounded like they were memorized from Zhonghui Food Chronicles. If it wasn't for Chu Wanning's cold and pleasant voice, Mo Ran would have flipped the table and left. Hey, did you hear? Xianyuan Pavilion's last auction item was bought by someone from Rufeng sect. The private rooms were separated by bamboo curtains, so the voice of the person next to them was slightly louder. Without any hindrance, Mo Ran and the others could hear it clearly. Chu Wanning suddenly stopped his introduction of the crystal pork dish and looked at Mo Ran, listening attentively. A boorish man spoke, Why haven't I heard? Is it the holy weapon? The price of 300 million gold was paid on the spot. Ayo, it's really a sky-high price, I've never seen so much money in my life. Look at you, don't you know that other than the holy weapon, the Rufeng sect also spent 50 million to buy the butterfly-boned beauty feast? Heavens, isn't the butterfly-boned beauty feast used for raw food or dual cultivation? The number one sect in the world is actually doing such a despicable act of cultivation. This is too outrageous. Brother Su is wrong, the butterfly-boned beauty feast is a reasonable cultivation method, it's not a forbidden technique. Although the beauty feast looks similar to us, it's not a human in the end. It's like eating an immortal fruit to help one's cultivation, there's nothing to criticize. Humph, forgive me for not agreeing. Another person chuckled, the one who bought the beauty feast seems to be a reclusive young disciple of the Rufeng sect, called something Shi. I heard that he looks quite decent, but I didn't expect him to be the kind of person who relies on sleeping with women to increase his cultivation. I think the Rufeng sect is also at its twilight. Someone next to them chuckled, What's wrong with that, everyone loves a beauty. The people next to them began to argue about ethics and morality, it wasn't worth listening to. Chu Wanning softly repeated, the holy weapon was bought by the Rufeng sect. It sounds like it. Chu Wanning couldn't help but reveal a worried expression, this would be difficult. If we want to follow up this matter, we will have to go to the Rufeng sect to investigate. As soon as he said this, Mo Ran remembered and softly said, Shizun was originally from the Rufeng sect. You don't want to go back. At the mention of returning to Rufeng sect, Chu Wanning's expression became weary, his eyebrows twitching as he said, although this sect is one of the foremost sect in the cultivation world, I once. Halfway through his words, a clamor suddenly came from the hall. Someone shouted, "Owner, I'll give you 500 gold, immediately clear the place and drive these guests out. Today, our young master wants to book the whole place." End chapter.